The first was an equipment malfunction during Joe Kittinger's leap from about 19.5 miles up on the 16th of August 1960. During his ascent, the following happened in his own words.
At 43,000 feet, I find out what can go wrong. My right hand does not feel normal. I examine the pressure glove. Its air bladder is not inflating. The prospect of exposing the hand to the near vacuum of peak altitude causes me some concern. From my previous experiences, I know the hand will swell, lose most of its circulation, and cause extreme pain. I decide to continue the ascent without notifying ground control of my difficulty. Circulation has almost stopped in my unpressurized right hand, which feels stiff and painful.
Upon landing,
Dick looks at the swollen hands with concern. 3 hours later, the swelling disappeared, with no ill effect.
His total ascent took 1 hour and 31 minutes. He stayed at the peak altitude for 12 minutes, and his total descent took 13 minutes and 45 seconds, so his hand was exposed to a near vacuum for quite some time without long-term ill effects. In another incident that occurred during STS-37 in 1991, the 8th flight of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, NASA engineer Gregory Bennett states,
"The palm restraint in one of the astronaut's gloves came loose and migrated until it punched a hole in the pressure bladder between his thumb and forefinger. It was not explosive decompression, just a little 1/8 inch hole, but it was exciting down here in the swamp because it was the very first injury we've ever had from a suit incident. Amazingly, the astronaut in question didn't even know that the puncture had occurred. He was so hopped up on adrenaline, it wasn't until he got back in that he even noticed there was a painful red mark on his hand. He figured his glove was chafing and didn't worry about it."
What happened to cause the mark was that his skin and blood sealed the small hole. The astronaut in question, which was either Jerry Ross or Jay Apt, Bennett never said which, suffered no long-term ill effects from a tiny bit of his skin being exposed to space for an extended time. As for how long that was from puncture to re-entering Atlantis, it isn't known, but for reference, the two astronauts spacewalked for a total of 10 hours and 49 minutes during the mission.
It goes on from there. Oh, he's got this guy right here. This guy did a 1960 high-flying leap, right? And apparently one of his gloves lost pressure, so his hand swelled up. That's what it claims in here. Only his hand, just because the glove wasn't fitting right. Nothing else was affected. And then we go to here. Apparently this astronaut on the ISS suffered a micrometeor impact on his hand, and they're just showing the little circle of it right there, right? And it punched a hole in his glove while he was out on an EVA. This is the effect he had on the thing. It kind of, the vacuum kind of, I guess it was chilled it down and gave him a freezer burn or whatever on his hand. They have it, it's actually listed. He stayed out there for 10 hours and 49 minutes. He stayed out for a total spacewalk with a hole in his glove. This guy can get out and put this kind of garbage out. But how could you have a suit, pressurized suit, you have damage? It's a 1/8 hole that a micrometeor punched a 1/8 hole in your glove. To punch a hole in your glove while you're wearing the glove, it's going to punch a hole through your hand at the same time. And you're not going to stay out for 10 hours and 49 minutes on an EVA with a damaged hand, number one. And second of all, you'd be dead within a second in that vacuum.
Yep.
Does anybody here in the panel have any idea of the number of micrometeoroid hits on spacesuits in the last 50 years? Is there a record of that? Any damage and recorded damage done? See, I find that very strange that there isn't a recorded history of micrometeoroid hits on astronauts or manned space missions. You have them recorded for unmanned missions, specifically for that purpose, but you don't hear of any hits outside of that. I was just wondering if there's a record of that. Does NASA keep a record?
That's the very first of me hearing about any damage to a spacesuit. Then he gets to the moon, and he said, "Oh, it's easy to come back because it's downhill all the way." Well, you have to look up at the moon, so it's downhill all the way. So it's easy to come back.